Hello, true duelists. YGO here. My favorite color is blue, and my favorite monster in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. So go ahead and guess what drew me to this one. Welcome to Why Not Play, a series where I talk about why I play and why you should play various decks. This week I'm talking about Nekroz, the first good ritual deck, because Demise OTK wasn't actually a deck, it was a mistake. Yes, the ultimate cosplay deck, or maybe the ultimate desecration of graveyards in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Because the Nekroz lore are a clan that perfected rituals to use the power of legendary monsters and clad themselves into them. What does it mean to clad yourself into something? I don't know. Who cares? It doesn't change the ultimate outcome. I'm still activating Trishula's effect. Because hell yes, that is the number one reason to play Nekroz, Trishula's effect. And you know, it's one of the few competent ritual decks in the game. It's a throwback to some of the best cards of the Synchro era, and it's a consistent deck, and hey, the color blue. Nekroz are a surprise hit for me. I was playing in their debut format, all through Duelist Alliance. During that time, I was actually quite annoyed by them because I played Shadal, and man, that was not a favored matchup in the slightest. They were also insanely priced. If I remember correctly, Brianok was about $450 for the playset. Valks were $90 each, I think. My numbers might be a little bit off, but trust me when I say that the deck was not on a rent-friendly price tag. Try asking mom and dad for rent support because you wasted it all on shiny cardboard. Not a good time. So let's get to it. Nekroz. They're a pretty small archetype, all things considered. They only have 4 main deck regular effect monsters, and then 1 ritual monster from levels 3 to 11. The only exception being it has 2 level 10 monsters. Of the regular effect monsters, they have a great Sorcerer of Nekroz, who looks like the average boomer and has 2 effects. If he's tributed, he'll add a spellcaster type Nekroz ritual from deck to hand, and if he's banished, he can foolish any Nekroz monster from the deck. Dance Princess makes your opponent unable to respond to your Nekroz ritual spells, and if tributed, can add a banished Nekroz monster to your hand. Exa adds a dragon type Nekroz ritual from deck to hand if tributed, and special summons a banished Nekroz other than itself when it's banished. That can revive your banished ritual monsters, but only if they were properly summoned before they were banished. Technical ruling. And lastly, there's Shurit. If he's tributed, he adds a warrior Nekroz ritual from deck to hand, and best of all, he can count as the entire requirement for a ritual summon of a Nekroz using a Nekroz spell. It's a long-winded way of saying he's the full cost to summon your monsters. Great card. These 4 are the core, all being able to search any ritual between the 3 of their effects, and lore-wise they are every monster. Because the rituals are literally just these 4 channeling the powers of old synchro monsters, or desecrating their corpses, whichever you prefer. These cards hate extra deck monsters, and the ritual effects all work against extra deck summons in general. Counting up from the lowest level to the highest, we'll start with Colossalus. He can reduce 1 extra deck summoned monster's attack to 0, and can be discarded to add a Nekroz spell or trap from deck to hand. The level 4 is Unicorn, who on field is a skill drain for all extra deck summoned monsters, and can be discarded to the grave to grab a Nekroz card from grave to hand. Kind of a nice little trade, a 1-for-1. Nekroz of Catastor makes it so any Nekroz monster that battles a monster summoned from the extra deck is a Catastor, destroying the extra deck summoned monster at the start of the damage step, and it can be discarded to special summon any Nekroz monster from the grave. Like with Little Exa, this only works on ritual Nekroz monsters if they've been properly summoned before they went there. Brianok can bounce 2 extra deck summoned monsters and can be discarded to add any Nekroz monster from your deck to your hand. Again, phenomenal. Gungnir on the field can discard 1 Nekroz card to target and destroy any card on the field, and can be discarded from hand herself to make 1 Nekroz monster you control indestructible for the turn. Both of her effects are quick effects. Nice. Valkyries contribute up to 2 monsters from your hand or field to draw the same number of cards, and when the opponent declares an attack, can banish 1 Nekroz card from your grave, and then discard himself to end the battle phase. Trishula needs no explanation, other than the fact that it needs an explanation. Nekroz of Trishula's effect is worded differently from the original version, which says up to 1 of each. Nekroz Trish does not say up to, which means for its effect to resolve, you need to banish one card from each of the opponent's hand, field, and grave in order for it to resolve. If the opponent has no hand, no field, or an empty grave, you cannot trishula them. It's an important distinction. It literally makes and breaks the card. It is also a hard once per turn, because Trish's effect honestly should be. And then as the extra in-hand effect all Nekroz rituals have, it can be discarded as a quick effect to negate the effect of a card that targets a Nekroz monster you control. Very insane card. The first level 10 is Decisive Armor, who once per turn can banish one set card on the field, and can be discarded to give a Nekroz monster 1,000 additional attack. It has 3,300 attack, and was the first one that I pulled way back in the day buying Secret Forces, so it's my favorite one. It's not just because it's a dragon, it's sentimental, damn it. The second level 10, and the newest, I cannot pronounce. A red bear? Bread. When on field, contribute a monster from your hand or field to negate and banish a monster that has activated its effect, and can be discarded to tribute up to 2 monsters from your hand or field to send that many Nekroz cards from the deck to the grave. It also has 3,300 attack, and being a monster negate makes it a very easy fit into modern builds. The last ritual is the level 11 Sophia. It is based on God. Quite literally cosplaying God. Sophia, the goddess of rebirth, was God in the Dual Tomb lore, and Dance Princess is wearing her like it's Prada. She requires you to tribute exactly 3 monsters, so no Shurit cheating, but once summoned has the quick effect to discard one Nekroz spell to lock your opponent from summoning for the extra deck for the phase. A soft scythe lock, if such a thing could ever be said. More notably, when she's summoned, she'll banish all other cards on both fields and in both graves, and is the only monster you're allowed to summon the turn you summon her. She's broken as all hell, but asking 3 monsters for the summon is a big ask for the deck, so you'll rarely see her being played. It's only in a dedicated build. The other cards in the archetype are the ritual spells. Mirror can tribute materials from the hand or banish them from the grave to ritual summon. Kaleidoscope can send monsters from your hand or extra deck as the material for a ritual summon, and can summon more than 2 rituals at one time, only from the hand. And Cycle can summon a monster from the hand or the graveyard, and has to tribute from the hand or field to do so. Each one also has the same effect in the graveyard to banish itself and another Nekroz monster from the grave while you control no monsters, and if you do, add a Nekroz spell from deck to hand. There is no Nekroz trap. Colossus's effect to add a trap is just a myth. You are being lied to. Just from all that though, you can see why they're a strong archetype. Every other card in the deck searches. They have effects to banish, effects when they're banished, and effects to interact with their banished cards. There's plenty of natural synergy, which sure is what archetypes are made to do, but it feels really good in this deck. Not to mention the other plethora of generic ritual cards, Manju and Senju, Preparation of Rites, and thanks to Kaleidoscope, they can even abuse Herald of the Arclight. A very favorite play in any Nekroz deck is to use Kaleidoscope to send a Herald in order to summon a Unicorn, stunning the opponent's monsters and getting a search on top of it. And generic ritual support only continues to grow. In the years since they were the top dog, the incantation monsters have come out and work great with the deck, both to search and recover ritual cards, and as tribute fodder for the summons, or even something like Valk's effect to draw. And most recently, Diviner of the Herald can be another way to proc Herald of the Arclight's effect in the grave. I've heard it called Google.deck, and man does it feel like that. The amount of searching becomes almost too much. You have to know what's best to search for what situations. It's a deck that's able to adapt pretty well on the fly if played well, and able to tunnel into Trishula and lose when played poorly. By the nature of being a ritual deck, it means playing it requires managing your resources at all times. Not keeping enough tribute fodder means you can't make your summons anymore, and knowing when to let your field be cleared so that you can use your ritual spells in grave to search, versus when to protect your board with something like, say, Gungnir or Trish or Valk, so that you can keep the pressure on the opponent, is important and can be the deciding factor on whether you win or if you lose. There's actually a number of reasons I ended up choosing to play this deck. The first is that it's a ritual deck. I'm a big fan of everything having a gimmick, and the whole summoning mechanic is a pretty good gimmick. And also, like I said, they require a level of resource management that's very easy to feel. By that I mean misplaying for one particular summon can leave that feeling in your gut that just makes you realize immediately that you fucked up. That was a bad play immediately after it's resolved. Versus when played a little more slowly and more properly, it can be very rewarding. Not that it can't OTK, it's plenty fast enough at that through a number of combos, but you have to know how to get to that combo based on both what's in your hand and what's on the field. Having played it for a bit, they remind me a little bit of Monarchs in a way. I tend to play a little more slowly. I don't always push for game immediately as often as I would with, say, Gladiator Beast or Adamancipator. Try to maintain hand advantage and board presence at the same time if I can. It's pretty damn punishing, and if I'm being honest, I lose with this deck way more than I win with it.
Loser! You're a loser! Are you feeling sorry for yourself? Well, you should be, because you are dirt!
But that always feels like it's my fault and not the cards. I'm always wondering which mistakes I made were full-on blunders, or if it was a minor one that didn't have too much impact, or maybe more impact than I thought. Which I love. There's nothing better than the feeling that you're actually improving with the deck and getting better at the game. My other reasons for playing it are a little more personal. I love synchro monsters, that's no secret. They were the hot new thing when I started playing, and cards like Catastor or Trishula were in as many decks as I could fit them into. Sure, that's probably the case for a lot of people who played at that point in time because they're both very good cards in their eras, but still. Even things like Gungnir in particular was an old favorite of mine in Mermail, and so having its legacy carried on in a new deck was cool to me. Also a very big fan of the color blue. Eiffel 65's I'm Blue Dabba Dee Dabba Die shaped my childhood in a way that could not be explained through words. The lyrics, they're just so relatable. If I were green, I would die. Another great thing about this deck is how many ways there are to play it. You can go full retro and play Performage Nekroz, as that is fully legal again as of my making this video. The incantation builds are a little more consistent and popular, and some people even like to play Mega Zaborg in their builds to try and turbo their grave with all the Heralds, Totally Awesomes, and then even things like Entis or Omega to pop, recover advantage, search from the deck, and just plus out the ass. It also works great as a small engine in another ritual deck. Brionac and Clausulus can search out Trish and Mirror, and since those levels add up to 9, you've got the most brain-dead Trishula play ever imaginable, really. And man, I feel like the combo potential is way bigger than even I can realize. There was a really quirky and inconsistent play back when they debuted to summon 2 Nekroz of Brionac using Kaleidoscope and sending a Quasar. By then overlaying the 2 Brios for an Exabeetle, you could equip the Quasar to it, and then use Exabeetle's effect to send the equipped Quasar to the grave and something else from your opponent. This would then trigger the Quasar's effect from leaving the field, allowing you to summon out Shooting Star Dragon. It's a crazy play, it's not very strong, but it's possible to do, and it makes me wonder what other sort of goofy shit you can accomplish by using these cards in this engine. My last point in favor of the deck is the future-proofing it was given. A big problem for a lot of cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the forward march of time, reducing some cards into irrelevancy. Something like Apocryphort Towers that mentions ranks and levels, or Dimensional Barrier, which hilariously mentions rituals just to fuck over this deck, I guess, but Ritual, Pendulum, Fusion, Xyz, or Synchros, that card was huge in early 2017 formats, but both of those cards' effects are completely useless against Link monsters. Thankfully for Nekroz, it doesn't work against specifically Fusion, Synchro, and Xyz monsters that were out at the time, and I guess technically Pendulums, but it works against extra deck summoned monsters, which means that it's safe from any future thing and still good against even Link decks. But that being said, there is a reason they are not the top dog anymore. Cards like Ash Blossom and Called by the Grave have come out since, and they counter Nekroz in a way that the deck never had to deal with back in 2015. And first turn boards are far more oppressive today than they were in 2015, where the worst negates Nekroz feared were some Solemns and maybe the odd Cyber Dragon Infinity. Now it's the whole damn field it has to contend with. It's also damn easy to side against. Dimensional Barrier and Droll and Lockbird will kill this deck without a thought, and they're both common enough in sideboards in the majority of formats that they'll keep this deck from ever being truly back in the meta, at least I can imagine. There's also the fact that if you don't have Shuret, the Nekroz ritual spells all specify that your levels for the tribute have to be exact. You can't over-tribute by a level or two using 2 level 5s to summon Valkyris, who's only level 8. And for the icing on the cake, the level 7 and higher ritual monsters all state that you can't use a monster of the same level to summon them. So even if you have Synchro Trish in your extra deck, it can't be sent with Kaleidoscope to summon Nekroz Trish from your hand. You'll need to send 2 monsters who equal 9. Sure, it's important, that's what I'm saying. It also has the giant target of negate the ritual spell written on it, as does any ritual deck, because all your opponent has to do is keep the negates for the ritual spells, and if they negate each of them, you're probably not going to be doing anything that's worthy of being called a threat. And as said earlier, it is punishing as hell to misplay. It is very easy to lose with Nekroz, and that is not just because of power creep. But still, I love this deck. Its monsters are a nostalgic callback to what was played back when I first got into the game. And when the deck was competitively relevant, it's right in the time where my friends and I were so into Yu-Gi-Oh! That a few of us sat down to start making a YouTube channel. And soon enough in the future, I'm sure it'll be nostalgic for a time where I sat in a room by myself wearing a goose sweater talking about the deck. It's a fond one in my heart. What else can I say? There are 2 builds that I've toyed with most recently. The first is an Incantation Zaborg build, because it's really funny when it gets off. 45 cards is maybe a bit odd, but with the searching, I find it's not too big of an issue. It's, as to be expected, far more casual than competitive, but for me, regardless, resolving Zaborg makes it all worth it. You go +5 to like +8 depending on what you send, and then you can cripple the majority of their strategies. It's just, mwah. It's pretty consistent with the incantations as well, but Zaborg and the Manjus do conflict for your normal summon, and then beyond that, it's pretty standard Nekroz shenanigans. This other one here is the Performage version because I am a simp for the year 2015. It ain't the build to play in the modern day, but the rank 4 plays and valk stalling make it passable, at least at a more casual level, and it really brings me back. If you're building for modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, definitely go with something more like the Incantation build, maybe cut out the Zaborgs. But if you're looking for a retro format build, the Performage one is a good enough starting ground. It's a skill-intensive deck. Definitely not DDD by any means, but we can't all major in theoretical physics to learn to play a deck. It's a damn fun deck to mess around with and just try and grow as a duelist. And when you can play well, you can truly look your opponent in the eye that you outplayed them. You bested them in a children's card game. And that's what it's all about, that level of reward and satisfaction. If you want more of a challenge from a deck, but don't want to learn combo trees like this nonsense, I recommend you give Nekroz a shot. It might surprise you. Just don't blame me when you automatically lose to Dimension Barrier. That's gonna happen, and it's not my fault. It's just, why did Konami put Ritual on that card? And that's it. Go play it. It's cheap as hell nowadays. The most expensive card is the secret rare version of Brianak, which I think is at about $25 as of making this. But if you don't want that, I think there are ultra rare copies available for like $4 a pop. So it's really not that expensive. And you know, if you don't care about rarity, it's very cheap. Thank you for watching. Leave a like and a comment if you enjoyed. Shout out this week go to that one guy who reportedly took out a loan in 2015 to play full power Nekroz on release. I'm sure that was a fantastic financial decision that worked out perfectly and without any issues moving forward. As always, subscribe to YGO Strats so you too can become a true duelist.